responded to and posted within the National Grid portal under the Project and Guidance tab within the Massachusetts page. Lastly, this presentation will be recorded and will be posted in the same location as I had mentioned earlier for the Q&A within the portal. As a disclaimer, this presentation has been prepared solely as an aid to discussions between National Grid and interested stakeholders and cannot be used for any other purposes. This presentation contains high-level general information, not project-specific, which may not be applicable in all circumstances. National Grid makes no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, or usefulness of this information, or warranties of any kind whatsoever, expressed or implied. National Grid assumes no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content. Nothing contained in the presentation shall constitute legal or business advice or counsel. No party is authorized to modify this presentation, and the webinar, again, is being recorded. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be reviewing Massachusetts hosting capacity maps. We're going to be beginning with a quick safety moment, going into then a data portal overview with a live demo, discussion around the feature analysis scope, and then again, finishing up with reviewing the questions and answers. So please use that link provided for Microsoft Forms to submit your questions, and we'll be gathering them to address at the end of this presentation.
Okay, let's jump right into it. I'm Dan Rogers. I'm an engineer for the Distribution Planning and Asset Management Department for Massachusetts. And we're going to start off today with a quick safety moment. So with summer coming into full swing, I don't know about you guys, but I was cleaning my gutters yesterday, so I had a multitude of different ladders set up, try and get up and have access. So some ladder safety, the biggest things for me is 3 points of contact. So either it be 2 feet, hand, 2 hands, 1 foot, and you always maintain 3 points of contact. Something that can help you do that is if you wear a tool belt. That way you don't have to be holding too many objects in your hands while going up a ladder. Another thing that I check immediately is make sure it's firmly footed, and that most extension ladders on the rungs, they have a flattened edge for your feet, and you can check to make sure that that is level. So if that is level, then you know that the ladder is placed correctly. And then lastly, as you can read on these are some good tips too, but the most important thing is to never leave a ladder unattended. So even if it's inside your house, outside, even if you don't have children, there could be people walking by, children walking by, neighbors, and the last thing you want to do is have the liability of someone climbing a ladder on your property. So always remember to stay safe. And yeah, 3 points of contact, very important. So going into the Massachusetts System Data Portal, what is the portal? It's a web-based tool that houses a few different maps that we have that also include distribution line level data. The map provides location and specific information with respect to the heat map and hosting capacity. It would be percent loading and available DG hosting capacity for each distribution line, and provides substation data as well. So the new splash screen that we have includes company reports, the distribution assets overview, which houses the same information as the heat map, but is not color coded by percent loading, the hosting capacity map, and recently we've added storm outages by color code and percent customers out per storm, and sea level rise, which illustrates up to 10 foot of a sea level rise, what assets or areas would be underwater potentially. So where do I find the portal? We actually just changed the link a few months ago. So this is the updated link. You'll also be able to find it in the NCAP application portal. But with this new domain, we no longer require a login. So it is a public access link, which will be easier to access for everyone. So going through some of the major features, we initially have our electric map, which is a randomized color-coded distribution line map that displays percent loading, your 2019-2020 loads, as well as forecasts. So the purpose of this map and the heat map is to aid in the siting of electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging stations, large load interconnections, and potentially DG relief on certain distribution lines. We also house our annual reliability reports and our distribution planning guides. So those give an insight as to some of the projects we're doing, how we go about siting and maintaining our assets. The major feature in the Massachusetts Data Portal is the hosting capacity map. So we have a DG hosting capacity map, which is color coded by available hosting capacity. There are two different layers in the legend. One includes all aggregates connected DG, and then we have a layer that includes connected and pending, so any DG that is in queue to include in the host capacity map. So the future of the hosting capacity map is going to a segment level mainline hosting capacity. So for the length of the lines, we would thus calculate the variable level of hosting capacity based on different mainline fuses, recloser, supervisory controls, things along that line. The current substation information we have provides 3v0 information, which is your transformer high side protection. So that will give a substation restriction for DG. We also display aggregate connected and pending DG, which will usually trigger an ASO study in certain areas. So you can tell in a certain area how much connected and pending DG is based on the substation level information. The approaching update for our hosting capacity map and substation information is coming in November 2021. And with that, with the introduction of the nodal hosting capacity, it'll also display transformer bank ratings, as well as the connected and pending DG by generation type. So we're going to jump into a quick walkthrough. So going through, we have our company reports, which include our distribution planning criteria, our study flowchart, and then the most recent redacted annual reliability reports. Distribution asset overview and the heat map, as I mentioned before, house the same data, but are just color coded differently. So we'll hop into the heat map here. So this heat map is a color coding of our 2020 loads, and we also include forecasted information in here as well. So if we were to say go into a Foxborough area substation, so Foxborough 2, our summer rating for this line is 8 MVA. Currently loaded at 75% with a steady forecast. So let's grab this line, W1. So we can see that this has a pretty steady peak load. It's not too close. So if we were to add electric vehicle charging, it would hold it. But it also has a good base load for DG interconnection. So going into the hosting capacity map, we can then search for this line, which I will shortly. But going into the hosting capacity map splash screen, as I mentioned before, something that I find useful off the bat is going into your legend layer list, and then you can then see the difference between when we include the pending and when we don't include it. So this is our hosting capacity if we don't include the pending DG for all of the lines. And then when we do include the pending, obviously, as you can see, the hosting capacity goes down a lot for the majority of Bay State West in these areas. this is a good screen to go through, but a lot of the areas that do have this much pending are in studies. Now, a few tools that are useful for the hosting capacity map would be to search by feeder. So I already have it populated in here. So we'd go in, we'd find that feeder that we saw from the heat map, that it had a pretty steady base load and a strong projection. We'll apply it, and then it zooms right in to this area. So we go ahead and select it. Now we can get the hosting capacity data for this feeder. So the current available hosting capacity is 6.65 megawatts. And this is taking into account connected DG, which there is one small rooftop, it looks like. It is so high though, because if you look, there's only 350 kilowatts of connected. So there's no ongoing or potential for an ASO. This was updated recently. And then if we look at the substation data, the total for this substation bank is 0.35 and 0.1. So it says that 3V0 is not needed. So it already has high side protection. And then using this map, if we were to say site a location, so all of our pink lines are 1 or 2 phase, so those aren't ideal for larger sites. So what we can do is say we were looking at some land back here. How far of a line would we need to connect it? So you could use the measuring tool right in here. So let's say it's here. We have to work around a brook going. So 0.64 miles to the main line. And then how far away are we from the substation? Just doing a quick jump around. So 3 miles roughly from the substation. And when our lines are blue like this, it can be hard to see substations. So one way to do it is to toggle them on and off. And now you can see the substation here and there. So let's say that we see a site here. Is there existing capacity for this? So the current host capacity on this, it says 3.64. And then I'm assuming that site right there is the part of the aggregate for your 3.26 number. So let's go in, let's say this is our substation over here. Looks like there's a site right there as well. So that is a little tight on land, but there's other things that we can do too. Change the base map. So if we do topography, we'll be able to see swamplands, areas that we probably couldn't build, rooftop access, things along those lines. But yep, those are some of the main features. And then jumping into some data discrepancies that we have had, just because when I'm using this map and when others are going to be using the map, when we're calculating hosting capacity, we want it to reflect, real numbers. So when I calculate the hosting capacity and take into account connected DG, these numbers reflect the DG that I have taken into account that directly affects the hosting capacity. So say that there was a battery connected and it is in the NCAP documentation and it aggregates up to that line, you will see that there is another 1.5 megawatts of connected, but that DG, specifically the battery, shouldn't be limiting the hosting capacity if it was originally there to increase the hosting capacity. Another reason for discrepancies would be natural gas backup generators for hospitals. We see that a lot where I don't want to include that against the hosting capacity available, as they're normally there for a certain purpose and not to generate revenue. So that is the majority of the data found in the hosting capacity map. Now, the future update, which I'll go into in a minute, would basically take this line right here and see it's all shaded for 5.2, which is really just the max hosting capacity that is located at the substation right here. Instead of having that one broad number that is a upper limit, we would now have segmented analysis. So most likely, if there was a recloser here that did not have voltage supervisory control, this downstream section would be color coded much lower for hosting capacity unless that had got updated. And the future update will also increase hosting capacity for certain areas, because with the mass update, we take the newest models from our global information system, and that will reflect the increase in your asset improvements from other DG triggered events. So say that this line had interconnected 2 megawatts, and during that they changed regulator settings at the substation and added a recloser that is bidirectional. So now those improvements actually increase the hosting capacity overall. So that is an overview. So like I mentioned before, our future hosting capacity analysis is going to be nodal. So this will show a segmented analysis and data for every segment. So it'll have the high and low hosting capacity range for that segment, as well as the mainline voltage. So with certain lines that we have step down transformers. So just because a distribution line coming out of the station starts at 13.8, that doesn't mean the whole main line is slated to be that voltage. A lot of the times halfway down, we'll drop it to 4 kV for certain reasons, and that will increase, it'll decrease the hosting capacity because it now is dependent on the ratings for those step down transformers. The analysis afterward will include some post-processing. So we will include a flicker analysis, as well as a 3v0 limitation screen. So this will take into account all the existing DG on that substation transformer bank, excuse me, and then base it against minimum load, and then it'll give a threshold for what may or may not trigger 3v0 to be needed in areas that need it. The areas that don't need it are marked on the map in the substation information. With reference to stakeholder involvement, for any questions on the Massachusetts data portal, any of the maps, any of the data, reach out to imap@nationalgrid.com. We're pretty good at getting quick response and turnaround times and explanations. And then with respect to non-wireless alternatives, you can contact the email listed and request to be added to our NWA stakeholder distribution list for any RFPs that are going to go out in the future. Great. So from there, we're going to be moving into our Q&A, where James will be reading off some questions from that forms list, and then we will be answering them.
Yes, thank you for that, Dan. We have not received any questions at this time. I wanted to, again, remind you, if you have questions, we have time to go ahead and submit them using the link that's provided within the chat window. It's going to lead you to a Microsoft Forms where you just submit your question through there. We'll then be able to receive that and answer it. So we'll stay on, and if you have questions, please use this time to go ahead and submit them.
For all those that are joining in a little bit late, we do have a recording that was started for this meeting as well, so you'll be able to overview it if you wish.
I received one question asking, will we get this recording? I'd like to present this in my company for internal discussions. This recording will be stored within the National Grid portal, where you can find it within the Massachusetts page under the Massachusetts seminar. So we'll go ahead and upload the recording as well as any other additional questions and answers that we receive. We received a question asking, Dan, will we be able to tell what is temporary generating capacity?
I'm not exactly sure what the question is asking, to be honest. Will we be able to tell what is temporary generating capacity? Yeah, if you could elaborate on that, Jose, I'd appreciate it. Or feel free to come off mute too.
Yes, I just wanted to know, you commented about generating capacity at Jose Donnell for like hospitals and stuff like that, things that are temporary. And there might even be some temporary things like load demand shaving and things like that. Is there any way to tell how that will affect the hosting? I mean, another
Gotcha.
example would be like battery systems, which would only be operating when solar isn't. You know, and if you had somebody that signed on with battery and with solar, you know, does it reflect that as well?
Yep. No, great question. And it is definitely something difficult to capture because we have hundreds of different sites that are like that. But in the upcoming analysis, we're going to have the models that would be limited based on mostly renewable generation and any generators that we know are consistently backfeeding into the grid. So hydro, we're always taking into account, wind, all solar. But when we're screening and creating the models, we don't include battery systems that are supposed to increase hosting capacity. There's no reason to double count. So say you have 2 megawatts and 1 megawatt of BESS. We don't want to include the BESS, the battery energy storage system, to count against hosting capacity. As far as listing it, we will be having DG by generation type in our future update. And the DG by generating by technology type is separated out in the aggregate on the NCAP data portal. But with respect to the type and level of generation, I don't believe we're going to be able to distinguish out what is a we won't be able to publish what is a backup generator versus a peaking generator. That is too customer specific as far as with reference to privacy. But with with a little bit of scoping around, you can get a feel for what was used to calculate the model and then what the technology types are. So for the models themselves in the most recent update, I'm going to include the amount of DG that was taken into account to create the model. And then there's going to be a direct reference, which is different from this, where I'm including the DG that I took into account only and not the NCAP data, but we're going to have the technology type based on the NCAP data in the future. Is that satisfactory, Jose?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Thanks for the question.
And as a follow-up for the question regarding this recording, we will be sending out an email within the next couple of days with a link to the National Grid website, which will house the recording link, the slide deck, and the Q&A. So we do not have any other questions at this time. We will stay here online if anyone wants to ask any additional questions.
One last
If anyone-
question I'll ask is, can you send out the links, just a series of links in the email when you send it out? That will connect to this data?
A series of links to get to this data portal here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, James,
Yeah,
that
that's
shouldn't be
something.
that shouldn't be bad.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
And if you have any other questions, anything at all, Jose too, the best way to reach us is imap@National Grid. That email is usually directed to me or the party responsible.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So again, we are happy to stay on and answer questions. If you are needing to drop, we appreciate you again joining. I hope you took something away from this and it was informative. And if there's, again, any additional questions, please feel free to submit them using the links provided within this slide here after this meeting. Okay, well, it looks like there's no questions at this point. If you think of something after this meeting, again, please submit your questions via the links below. And thank you again for attending this webinar, reviewing the hosting capacity maps for Massachusetts. And we look forward to the next webinar. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.